look at how yarn overs, when they're in pairs, work together with decreases. So a pair of yarn overs can either be two yarn overs separated by a stitch, or it can be a double yarn over. So let's start with the former. This is a little pattern I'm making where we have two yarn overs separated by a stitch. So if you remember from your basic lace knitting, every time you make a yarn over, that's making an increase. See how this yarn over hole turns into a stitch above it? So it's an increase. And to get rid of extra stitches when we do that, and we want to keep our number of stitches steady, we have a decrease. So that's really basic. So here we've got that yarn over. Here you can see two stitches being worked as one. So let me work this for you, and you can see how I did it. So I did a decrease for the first yarn over. I did knit two together, then I did the yarn over. Then I knit one to separate the yarn overs. I made another yarn over, and I did SSK. Just knit one more. Okay, so when I come back around to this later, each of these will be worked as one stitch, and a stitch count stays the same. You see how those stack up? There's a little column there in between them, and they just make a little pattern. Okay, now I have another section where I did it a little differently. You can see I still have a yarn over separated by what looks like one stitch, but instead of working my decreases on the outside, I actually worked a double decrease on the inside. So what's a double decrease? Well, remember, I have to get rid of one stitch for each yarn over. Here I have two yarn overs, so I need to get rid of two stitches. And to do that, I'm going to take 3 stitches and turn them into one stitch in between my two yarn overs. So I'm just did a regular knit, then my yarn over. Now I'm going to do slip 2, knit 1, pass the 2 slip stitches over. So I end up with one stitch where I had 3, and my other yarn over, and then a plain knit. So you can see everything still is going to be worked as a single stitch when I come back around. Looks a little different than the first one. Not very much, but a little. But those are just 2 ways you can get rid of 2 stitches for 2 yarn overs. Either one decrease before and after the set, or both decreases in the middle of the set as a double decrease. Alright, now I have a section here where we have double yarn overs. You can see those make bigger holes, and so you can make different patterns with them. In this area, I'm working them in a way that forms a honeycomb pattern, which is what I did in my Love is Love pie shawl and also in the berry pie shawl. So I'm going to be doing the one center one on this section. So how I did this was, like I did on those first single yarn overs where there was 2 of them separated, is I did a decrease, a knit 2 together in this case, yarn over, and then I did an SSK. So I made 2 yarn overs, and I had a decrease before and after it, but there's no stitch in between the 2 yarn overs, so they just create one big hole. And when I come back around, I'm going to have to work each wrap of this double yarn over as a separate stitch. Okay, and I have one more thing I want to show you in this area, and that is this section where I've got double yarn overs, but I've got them stacked up in columns instead of making a honeycomb pattern. And I have worked them with both kinds of decreases. So we have 2 yarn overs here and 2 yarn overs here. We need to get rid of 4 stitches. So this is what I've done. I've done a knit 2 together, so that's one decrease, and then a yarn over. So I decreased 1, increased 2. Now I'm going to do a double decrease. I'm going to do that slip 2 together, knit 1, pass the 2 slip stitches over. Now I got rid of 2 stitches at once. So I have 1 decrease, 2 increases, 3 decreases. Need 2 more yarn overs, and then I need that 4th decrease, so I'm just going to do SSK. I'll put a chart for this at the end of the video so you can take a look at it and see how that worked. But here we had 1 decrease, a double decrease, making 2 and 3, and the fourth decrease here, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 yarn overs. I'm just going to come around on this and show you how you work into those double yarn overs. There's a couple different ways to do it, but that's the basics that I wanted to show you on how you might find things set up in different lace patterns where you have 2 yarn overs. They can either be together without a stitch in between them, which creates big holes and requires you to work into that double yarn over as 2 stitches later, or they can be separated by a stitch or a decrease and they make a pattern with smaller holes. There could be more than 1 stitch in between as well, but the yarn overs are separated by stitches, so they make those smaller holes, and each one is a single stitch when you come back around. Okay, let me get back to those double yarn overs so I can show you how to work into them on the next round. Here I am back up to the last section I did with the double yarn overs that are stacked up. So let me show you how to knit across this on the plain row that comes in between the lace rows in this kind of patterning. Now there is a type of knitting where there's no plain rows in between. See how this is strands of yarn that are twisted together? That shows you that you've got plain rows between where you just worked plain stitches into the yarn overs. If you had lace stuff on every row, those would be just a single strand of yarn. So that's a clue if you're trying to figure something out. Okay, but now we're up to this, so I'm gonna just knit that last stitch before the double yarn over, and now I need to make 2 stitches there. But if I just knit into it twice normally, I don't really end up with 2 stitches. I end up with 2 wraps of yarn around my needle, but it's still one big thing. So that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is knit one and then purl one into the same stitch. So see, now I've got 2 secure separate stitches on my right needle. I'm going to knit that center stitch again and up to the double yarn over on the other side of it. Now I want to show you a different way to do that. Some people hate purling, and you can also do knit into the front, so a regular knit, and then with the second part of it you can knit into the back of it. Let me knit a couple more and then show you what those look like. So look at them. They're a little different. The hole is a little bigger when you do the knit and purl, so I like it better. But you can knit into the front and back of the stitch and you still get a big hole, but you see how that strand of yarn, it just right there in the corner of the hole, it kind of closes it up a little. If you did them all consistently that way, it would look fine. So if you seriously hate knit one, purl one, you could do knit in the front and the back of the double yarn over. So I hope you find that helpful. And right now, here's the chart that shows you what those different pieces of knitting look like. And you can take a look at that and then go back if you want to rewind and see how to do any of them over again.